The inspiration really came from this article that came out about 3 years ago around about suicide, 8-year-olds dying of suicide. And it was this moment where, when you think about it, if an 8-year-old knows what suicide is, let alone is carrying on with it, like there's something fundamentally wrong and we need to do something about it.
Hey everyone, my name is Kyle Walgren, and yes, this is another episode of the Business of Education. Today, our guest is Maria Barrera, the founder and CEO of a company called Clayful. And in a world that has so much chaos going on, she actually provides essential mental health resources for the K-12 students, especially those growing up in the TikTok generation. With a background in engineering, with a primary focus in the education technology space. Maria, I'm excited to hear about Clayful and a little bit about your journey. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you and to tell you more about the work that we're doing.
Well, you've been super patient while we got our stuff together, so I appreciate you doing that. Technology seems to be how we interact with our lives or engage in our businesses, but I still don't know how to use it on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for your patience. Maria, I'm super excited to find out about Clayful. I know that mental health is on the forefront every day. I was a kid that grew up with mental health challenges. So this is something that, really strikes me near and dear to my heart. And I'd love to hear a little bit about the product.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that and for being vulnerable with your audience here. So many of us grew up with some sort of mental health challenge, whether it's, small things or big things, right? And it affects pretty much every single one of us. And I think that's become increasingly clear since the pandemic, which is actually when we started Clayful. So the inspiration really came from this article that came out about 3 years ago around about suicide, 8-year-olds dying of suicide. And it was this moment where, when you think about it, if an 8-year-old knows what suicide is, let alone is carrying on with it, like there's something fundamentally wrong and we need to do something about it. So that was my call to action to get into this work. And I spent many months talking to anyone who would listen to me, trying to figure out, what the problem was, why we were in the way that in this state, and what I could do to help. Talk to a lot of parents, a lot of kids, a lot of teachers, administrators, and it became abundantly clear that there isn't enough mental health support, period, right? And especially when we talk about rural counties or different areas where there's less mental health professionals in general. But also that we've designed a system where we can only get mental health support once we reach a breaking point. And that's really what we're here to address, right? Like it's actually better to be going to the gym every day and working on your fitness before you have that, heart attack later down the road because you've been sitting for your whole life, right? So really thinking about preventative measures, because so much of what we do in our healthcare system is not that, and our kids deserve better, and we deserve better.
No, I can't agree with you more. I don't talk about it ever. I don't know if I've ever brought it up, but I was 14 when I attempted to take my own life, and I ended up in a hospital and spent some time there searching through my battles. So when I said that this is something that resonates with me, it really, really hits hard with me. And this was before TikTok, before Facebook, before online bullying. And it was just with the bullying that was happening in person that, pushed me to this edge. So I can only imagine how much that's intensified, online for our kids, and how much more it is with being really led down some dark holes, especially with TikTok, and how it can really embed some poor ideas in your head, especially about self-worth and value. And that's actually why I started my company, was because I knew that reading fell into my depression was from struggling in school, right? So it falls back to that. But walk us through how your product works.
I love that I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. And unfortunately, not alone, right? A lot of boys struggle with whether it's self-worth, whether it's bullying, right? We unfortunately see a lot of the school shootings that are happening, and there's so much bullying and so much pain underlying those actions. And when I was thinking about how do we address this problem, it was really about access, right? Is how do we reach our students who are in so much pain and who are being exposed to all these things in a way that is destructive, right? And who don't aren't going to be the first ones to walk into the counselor's office and say, "Hello, talk to me," right? But there's going to be other signs. So we we really designed the product to feel, one, to meet kids where they're at, right? We were talking about TikTok a lot, like they're on their
Mhm.
phones, right? Let's just call it what it is, and instead of trying to fight it constantly, let's teach them that these devices can actually do good, not just harm, right? So we're very much mobile first, designing it for our students to be, to meet them in the place where they're spending a lot of their time. And then we work with schools to ensure access and equity to for every student. So there's, when we start working with a school, it's everyone gets access to this, everyone gets introduced to it, because you don't know who's struggling,
Right.
right? There, you don't know who's holding all these things in. So by providing access to everybody, we're able to then reach those students who are really going through some tough times, but like haven't really spoken up about it. The So it's an app both on a school issued device or on a personal device, and students go in and connect with a coach in 60 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So they're chatting with a real human in 60 seconds, and it's all text based, right? So there's no video, there's no voice, and that's by design as well, right? Because when you're struggling and like when things are really painful, it can be hard to even say it out loud, right? It can be
Right.
hard to look someone in the eyes and say like, "Hey, this is what someone said to me in the hallway, and like that really hurt my feelings." But it's a lot easier to text it, right? And this is how this generation's talking anyway. I mean, hey, that's how much of my conversations happen too. So it's that modality that actually allows us to reach a wider population. 45% of our chatters are boys, and I'm really really proud of that, because that means that we're reaching an audience that doesn't necessarily typically get the
Right.
support. And that's all because of this intentional product design that helps us lower the barriers and really make it more accessible.
No, I like that. My wife texts nonstop, and I'm like, why will you text when a phone call will work? It takes you so long to get something out, but that's the way, the world is become. And a lot of my like really successful friends are the same way. They're like, well, I phone somebody when a text will work. So they're the complete opposite of what I am.
Mm-hmm.
But you touched on boys and the male population with some of the struggles they have. I've lost a friend to suicide, um, personally, and uh, it blindsided everybody he knew, just because you would never know from the outside that this person was struggling with anything. They had a very successful professional career. They were doing their dream. To the outside, it looked like everything was perfect, and just to find out that it wasn't. There was demons that they were chasing, and it's so surprising when you wake up to find out that something like that's happened, but then you walk through it for so long to see if you can figure out if maybe you missed something, and the people that it impacts, it's just so crazy. So I've been on both sides of it before. I've been in that hole, and then I've been somebody that's lost somebody from it. Um, so I've experienced a lot of it. What bridged you? What do you think the biggest hurdle was when trying to build this and get people onto it? Because you said that a lot of people can't say it out loud. So what's the privacy? I feel like it probably gets better support, especially from maybe like the younger men, knowing that it's discreet and that they don't know who it is, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Totally. What's interesting is kind of going back to your point about your wife, like a lot of our school educators are so used to, hey, like the way support works is you come in, you talk to a human, and that human is amazing, and you build a relationship, and they're going to support you through that. And I love that. I am so grateful for all our mental health professionals in schools. And again, we're not reaching everybody, right? Like if that was working, then our stats wouldn't be the way that they are, right? So shifting that mentality that, okay, yes, we can have amazing people and it can still not be enough
Hmm.
because there's all of these barriers, whether they're external barriers, right? I don't want to miss my math class to go talk to the counselor. Actually, I need to talk to someone at 7 p.m. at night, and my counselor is at home as they should be with their family. Or I don't want to be seen walking into a counselor's office because I don't want my friends to know that I'm struggling, right? So whether it's internalized or externalized barriers, they're there, right? So my job is to work with educators to help them see that this device that they think is so bad for their students, that is shown to be really bad in some ways, can actually be a helpful extension of their team and the work that they're doing. And shifting that mindset takes some time, right? Because now we're conditioned to seeing technology as bad. Um, my previous work, we started right when iPads were making their ways into the classroom, and we've essentially shifted what instruction looked like with devices. And now Nearpod is a household name, and districts across the country use it to better engage students in their lessons. So now we're thinking about, okay, how do we shift the mindset that like these devices don't have to be a distraction, they can actually be a helping hand and extension of your team. So when you have 10 kids in detention, and you don't need 10 people, right? But you can each have a device and they can all be chatting with the coach in real time. Like that's powerful. That's the power of technology. So that's been the hardest part. It's less the stigma on the student side and more but we've always done it this way on the educator side.
Right.
So I do a lot of conferences and a lot of talking about what the potential is, because at the end of the day, like a third of the escalations that we see, escalations meaning students who are struggling with self-harm or with harming someone else, are kids that were never on the school's radar, right? And like we would not have found them if it weren't for this additional access
Resource.
point. And that's life changing, that's life saving, right? That saves money because like you just said, you have a student in your school lose their life. Imagine all the disruption that happens in that community, right? All their friends are not going to school. They're all thinking about like, what did I miss? Why didn't I notice? Right? There's so much that happens in that community when a life or a shooting threat happens, that if we can avoid that and we can prevent that, that's game changing. So
For
that's
sure.
that's what I try to convince them of.
I actually think it was, I'm trying to remember when I'd seen it. I think it was like Suicide Prevention Day, maybe yesterday or the day before. So it's fitting that we're having this conversation now. But what have been some of the biggest obstacles getting it into a classroom? And I do want to come back and talk about your career prior to this and things that you've done, because you've done amazing things. But what were some of the biggest hurdles in getting this product into the schools that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the really explaining to educators like why this is unique and why it's different, um, and why it's going to be valuable for their students, that's initially it's an idea, right? So we're looking for innovative districts. They're like, oh, this is interesting, and I guess I do want to reach more students, and yes, like equity and access are important to me, and yes, mental health is important to me. So I'm willing to take a risk. Now, so we had to look for educators that were risk takers, right? And
Right.
and that can be hard. Now, over the past year or 2 years, we've gotten some really good data that has, I think, made that risk much easier to take, right? So we're looking at the impacts on attendance, right? Everybody's talking about chronic absenteeism and how impactful that has been for our students now, and we're able to get students to come in 2 more weeks when they're using Clayful.
Oh,
That's
wow.
huge, right? That can help get them out of the chronically absent bucket. So starting to see that data, starting to see decreases in anxiety and depression symptoms, starting to see, I mean, those escalations that I told you, right? Like lives that we're saving and intervening and preventing horrible things from happening later on. So all of these data points have made that decision for school districts much easier. So we've doubled the number of states that we're supporting in the last couple months, which has been amazing.
How long's your product been on the market for?
We've been around for almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. So you came just out of COVID then. You said
Yep.
that you saw a story about an 8-year-old um, that committed suicide, and that's what, bridged the idea. 8-year-olds typically don't have cell phones. So which age group are you guys focused on right
Yeah, they don't. We're really focused on the middle school and high school age child.
now? Hmm.
Will go as low as like fourth, fifth grade, really when they start to get those devices and they start to, developmentally, they're starting to look at peers and look at people outside their family for support, right? It's like when that independence sort of threshold starts to build up. And where a lot of the, frankly, like peer drama starts to kick up.
Yeah, for sure. It does start early, and I'm noticing it. I've got kids from the ages 11, 11, 10, 5, and 2. So I'm starting to see when they come home and their first signs of bullying, and it does start very early.
Mm.
And so we do have to be mindful of it, really early in their lives. But you said something that I started really diving into, because we battle with the idea of technology being bad for you as well, the iPad being bad for you as well. And right away when you said that, it made me start to think that it's not the device that's bad, it's the applications or content that's on it.
Mhm.
um and for some reason there's a hard bridge to like really make people understand it's not the iPad that's bad, it's the fact that your kids watching very violent things on YouTube, or are engaged on social media, and they've been obsessed with the like button, or you know whatever that looks like on whatever social media device that there's some social media platform they're on. But it's not the actual device
Mhm.
that is harming people, it's the products that they're using.
And
um
to be fair to them, like that's why those products have been designed in that way to be addictive, right? So we talk about how do we make sure that technology is additive, adding to your life and not addicting you, right? And like we're another one of our sayings, we're coaches, not crutches, right? So it's not that we want students to be constantly relying on us multiple over many sessions, but rather, hey, we're gonna talk about a challenge that you have and we're gonna give you a tool, and now you have another tool in your toolkit, and like tomorrow it might be another problem, and that's great, and we will work through that. But you're building out your toolkit and getting stronger, more resilient, more resourceful over
right.
time. And
The
that's a shift.
You said that we're coaches, we're not crutches. How do you make sure that the coaches you guys have are engaging and effective, especially with young users?
We train them all. So we have a very robust training. This is one of our, I would say, the secret sauces of Clayful. From the very beginning, we've been very hands-on with our coach training and making sure that they have the right resources that they're providing, the tools that are developmentally appropriate, and right, because like therapy is not necessarily built for a 12-year-old. And we teach them, how do you talk to a young person, right? We try sending them a paragraph, like they won't read that. So it's like very little punctuation, short sentences, like very quick responses, right? The things that you would envision from a middle schooler wanting to text back and forth. That's what we teach our coaches to do, because it's not the same talking to a 12-year-old as it is talking to a 30 or 40-year-old, right?
Right, for sure. One of the things that comes to mind, especially in my role, or one of the things for me that keeps me motivated, are seeing those successes, and seeing like those little wins when changing somebody's life. What's something that, obviously the impact for you's life or death sometimes.
Yep.
What's something that just keeps you awake at night? What's one of those wins where you're just like, thank God we made Clayful,
Mm.
without, putting yourself out there too much?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that are the most impactful are, there's two, and they're kind of on the opposite extremes. I'll talk about the most extreme is those potential self-harm suicide cases, right? Where a student says something like, I don't think anyone would care if I was here anymore,
Right.
or I don't want to be here anymore, or And when we start getting into it, there's all this like guilt and shame and pain, and connecting them to the school, making sure the school is aware, and having the school engage with the family and give them those resources. We had a student who had plans to end their life that night, and we were able to intervene, support their family, and the district saved them. Right, we saved them together. So that, and now they're doing well. Right, so it's that one obviously is very near and dear,
Hmm.
and because that is one of the big reasons why we started this. The other is actually on the other side of the intensity spectrum, if you will, but it's helping young people with their family relationships. So, like growing up, I came to the US when I was 10. Um, Lovely parents, we did not get along. My
Where are
mom
you
and I
from?
were like, Colombia.
Okay.
And we were in Spanish, you would say like oil and water. Like we did not, we were butting heads constantly. She was very overprotective, only child. Like there was just a lot of drama. And we're good now. We talk about this a lot, but it when I see our ability to help young people like have a conversation with their parents and repair a relationship, that and usually what this is my favorite part, they'll come in, they'll like talk to the thing, vent, be like, I can't believe they're doing this. We give them a tool, they have the conversation, they come back like, wow, I feel so much better, like that went really well. They'll give us the sort of ending of the story, and I love those because it almost like heals my younger self, if you will. Like that, in a lot of ways, I started this uh, to give myself what I wish I would have had. Right, I was your high achiever, like never going to be seen going into the counselor's office. Never, I don't need help. I don't need anything. So being able to provide that to others just heals my inner child.
Yeah, so high achiever, and when we set the bar, there's usually one standard when it comes into the tech world. But you are an engineering student from Stanford, but also went on to work with companies like Tesla. Walk us through that experience of your life.
Yeah, it's so I did my undergrad and master's in mechanical engineering, which is super relevant to mental health. But that meant that I got to work on the early innings, I guess, of like electric vehicles. So I worked in partnership with Tesla at a company called ChargePoint, where we did electric vehicle charging stations, and we're building out an interface with to work with the Teslas. At that point, like the Tesla didn't have the same charging ecosystems that they do today. So it was so funny because I was so deep. I thought I was going to build airplanes for a living. I thought I was going to build spaceships for a living. It was a very different world. And but as my hobby, I spent time working with middle school and high school kids, tutoring and them in science and math.
Oh wow.
And it was the realization that I loved that time so much, and was so driven and fueled by this tutoring time, and that I wasn't getting that from my 9 to 5. I was like, wait, what if I just lean into this instead? So ended up good getting into the education world because of that. And I build great IKEA furniture, so I'm still practicing my engineering skills every now and then. But it's not the same.
The you've What's one of your favorite things in seeing the advances in technology, especially with AI coming out, that you're looking forward to leaning into?
I love the way that we're able to really effectively train our coaches and have them practice. So one of the things we do a lot of simulations with our coaches,
Hmm.
so they can test out, what if a student says this? What if a student said this? I'm a big believer in human connection, right? So a student is always connecting with a real human, but I think AI can be a huge accelerant for our coaches. So if the coach ever gets stuck, we have a little AI sort of plugin that has our training embedded in it, and the coach can say, what do I say right now? Like imagine you're in a counseling session and you say, this is a real one, my grandpa died and I'm not sad about it. anyone in that room is going to be like, what do I say back to that?
Yeah.
The good news is in this case, there's no face, right? So like you don't see my expression, you don't see any judgment or any emotion from me, right? Because we're just texting. And the coach in that moment can get help from AI with our built-in training. So like what question or how to respond to that. So it becomes almost like a superpower for the coach to be able to have a AI phone a friend during hard sessions. That's still very much validated by our proprietary training.
Do you think that AI could maybe see a signal in the messages that you're getting or that the coach is getting that might be like a key identifier to an individual going the opposite direction that maybe a coach would overlook? Have you guys explored things like that?
We do have different ways that we're kind of monitoring conversations, and as well as we also have a whole curriculum component.
Uh huh.
So our journal entries, which is where some of those escalations frankly come from, because a student is talking to a journal and then saying things about how they're feeling. So yeah, we do use it for monitoring as well.
That's so interesting. If a school wanted to get involved with your product, how do they go about doing it?
The easiest way is to go onto our website. It's clayfulhealth.com, and there's a little form in there, or you can email me, Maria at clayfulhealth.com. Would love to chat with you. I love talking to educators across the country, hearing what's going on, hearing how they've solved this problem over the past couple of years and what else is missing. So even if it's just to like share their stories, I love connecting.
No, it's so interesting. One thing that I always end with, and I guess I selfishly do these things because I want to be able to reach out if I ever have tough questions. And, I get to learn so much from other people's ideas that are in the ed tech space because it is a very challenging world to navigate through, not only just getting your products in, but the sales cycles behind it, who's paying for it, how you're going to get paid, and then trying to raise money around it because VCs just love jumping into the ed tech space.
They love it.
They love it. So it's super challenging. So I like to, expand my network the best I can. But what's something that to a young founder getting into it that you would tell them about utilizing their network or something that's helped you with yours that you would care to share?
I mean, my network has been instrumental in all of this. Our first check in was by the CEO of Nearpod, who believed in us from the very beginning. And our institutional investors were the investors that we worked with then, because I worked with them when I was there and working on our board management. So I would say, like, your network runs deep, and the relationships that you build from the very beginning will make a difference. So just always show your, like, how much you care, perform well, execute in high quality work, like do things well, and people will notice and trust you, because trust and credibility takes a while to build up. It's very easy to break it down. So invest in that. Start depositing in that trust
Start
account
right
very, very
away
early on.
and
Yeah,
show up in
yeah.
person because people can get to know you a lot easier. There's so much stuff going on in hybrid approaches, but it's just like, how do you meet people and build relationships through that hybrid relationship that are going to go on and infect your life? I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm sure some people are working on it. It's not my thing, but Maria, I'm super grateful that you jumped on the pod. And thank you for your patience in making this
No
happen.
worries.
I had a blast talking to you. And I'd love to catch up with you again.
Yes, this was so lovely. Thank you again for your vulnerability and for sharing what you've been through. And I hope that your story inspires so many others out there to seek support and make sure that our young people are getting the support they need so that they never get to that point.
Thanks. I appreciate that.